Our first speaker tonight, our opening speaker is Elspeth Crocket. She's taught a few people, and I'm quite sure there's a few in the audience will know who Elspeth is. I think she's taught quite a few generations of Dumbarton and Vale children. I'm sure she won't be embarrassed by that. It won't be the first time I've said somebody's approached me and said, "Is that me, Mrs. Crocket?" She taught me at Our Lady in St. Pat's. So Elspeth's a well-kept face. She's a bit of a linguist, she's well-travelled, she's, I think, well-placed to make comparisons with Scotland and other European nations. But more importantly, Elspeth is a determined campaigner who wants to make Scotland a better place for all of us to live in. And I'll just ask Elspeth maybe to say a few words about where she thinks we're going. Okay?
Thanks very much, and it's really good to see so many people out tonight. What I'd like to say tonight, basically three things. Firstly, that we are one of the wealthiest countries in the world. We are an extremely wealthy country. Secondly, that wealth is not going to the right people. And thirdly, the present power structures that govern all our lives in the form of the Westminster parliamentary system are completely incapable of bringing prosperity and social justice, the one just as important as the other, to this town, to you, to your families, to all of us. Some of the more serious London papers are really beginning to do quite a lot of good stuff on the referendum. They're beginning to get their act together. So I'll start with the Financial Times, of all things, the Tory Bible. According to the Financial Times, the present British state is 18th in the OECD, the wealthiest countries in the world. And independent Scotland would be 14th in the OECD. In other words, it would go up 6 places. Some people put it higher. Some people put it into the top quartile of wealthy countries. There are 32 countries in the OECD. Some people put us, if we control of our resources, into 8th place, not 14th. You'll all think of oil and gas. That's what everybody thinks of. And we have unknown quantities of oil and gas. Not just what has already been discovered. The most conservative estimate of what the London Treasury has had is £300 billion from our oil and gas. Now, nobody can tell you exactly how much is left, but what we can say is that apart from the oil fields we all know of, there is oil in the Firth of Forth. Nobody knows how much, maybe as much, maybe more than oil in the North Sea. The government, the British government, knows about that, and that oil has never been either measured or exploited because the MOD put a veto on it. And they put a veto on it because the nuclear submarines couldn't get in and out from Faslane. In other words, what could have transformed the lives of hundreds of thousands, millions of people in West Central Scotland, we don't even know what that's worth. That's one thing we would be exploiting. And this week, they're reporting oil finds in Lewis to the west of Lewis. So we don't know how much. We know we've got 60% of Europe's oil and gas, but we don't know quite how much we have. Apart from that, and this is important, because we are far less dependent on our oil than, for example, Norway is. Now, Norway not only has an extremely high standard of living, the highest in the world probably, but they have an oil fund of £500 billion, £100,000 for every man, woman and child saved. We have zilch, nothing, because our oil, when it went to London, was used first of all for Margaret Thatcher's ideological crusade. Margaret Thatcher, on the one hand, took our oil and with the other hand destroyed our industries. That's where it's gone. It's also gone for the illegal wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And most of all, it's gone to maintain weapons of mass destruction a few miles from here with Son of Trident, which both Tory and Labour support, which is likely to cost £100 billion. But apart from the oil, We have 25% of the wind and tidal power in Europe. There is enough energy in the Pentland Firth between the North Coast and Orkney to fuel half the houses in Scotland. Not only that, we have 10% of the wave power. We have, the estimates go from 5 billion, which is very low, to 13 billion, world-class food and drink industry, obviously whisky, but also we have such a reputation for pure water. The food is of a very high quality. We have billions of pounds in tourism, whisky, life sciences, all sorts of things, and we have quite a very small population base. Not only that, this is one of my favourite ones, according to the United Nations, in 50 years' time, war will be fought over water. And guess who has more water per head than any other country in the world? Well, you know who it is. So, we are extremely rich. We are loaded. But it certainly doesn't seem like that. If you walk down the high street, it doesn't seem like that. When you think that the Dumbarton Food Bank is the one that's expanding quickest in the country, it doesn't feel like that. So where is this money going? Well, we know where it's going geographically. It's going to the southeast. And you know as well as I do that all areas actually in the United Kingdom, the north of England as well, is paying for London. And the disparity, the divergence of wealth in the present British state is downright disgusting. Britain is the fourth most unequal country, the divergence between rich and poor in the OECD. The Sunday Times Rich List was published a fortnight ago. London now has 107 billionaires, far more than New York, Hong Kong, Monaco. They're in London. Why are they in London? They're in London because the tax system in the UK is very attractive to them. Very attractive to them. Now, to put it in another way, the top 1%, the richest 1% of people in the United Kingdom own as much as the poorest 55%. The poorest 55%. Well, that's certainly most of us. Not only that, the richest 1,000 people between them own £519 billion. It's a disgrace. Child poverty in Scotland, particularly in the West Central Belt, is a national disgrace. Save the Children reckons that at least 20% of Scottish children are living in poverty. This is set to rise because if we don't vote yes, there will be a British general election next year, and both Labour and Tories are saying they will keep austerity going. It's an utter disgrace. In Glasgow, 23,000 children are living in poverty. In Springburn, it's 53%. So, the divergence it's wicked. And the only way we can do it, the only way we can change that is voting yes, because the Westminster power structures are such that they cannot, even if people wanted to, they cannot deliver what we need. And by the way, it's not just child poverty, it's pensioner poverty too. I'm a pensioner and I'm lucky, I've got a works pension, a small works pension, but the British state pension is roughly, the basic state pension, £6,300. It's one of the lowest in Western Europe. It's miserly. Pensioners in Norway, again, start, the least you're going to get is £15,000 and it can go up to £25,000. I've got contacts in Germany, I used to teach German, it can go up to £26,000 in Germany. Our pensioners are impoverished. We've got loads of money, but it's not going to people. It's going for macho products, it's got macho projects like Trident. Dreadful. I mean, think about it. Just up the road, nobody foresaw Chernobyl, nobody foresaw Fukushima being destroyed. That's up the road from us. And that's going before you, your family, your friends. It is an utter disgrace. Now, just a quick word about Westminster. The reason Westminster can't deliver is that, for all it's called the mother of parliaments, it's actually a very undeveloped system, underdeveloped compared to other modern European parliaments. All that happened was in the 17th century, the power of the king was taken off the king and given to the parliament, but it did not develop. It did not develop. We've still got the House of Lords. The House of Lords is a democratic outrage and it's the laughingstock of Europe. And it's got more members, it's got over 800 members than the European Parliament. It's got more members than any other parliamentary body in the world except the Chinese Assembly. Over 800 of them, including 92 hereditaries. Now you, through your taxes, are paying people at the Duke of Montrose £300 a day just to turn up. Clock in, go to the toilet, coffee, away again, £300 out for a nice lunch. The Marquis of Lothian, he's there as well. We can get rid of that. We've got to get rid of that. That's costing £50 million a year, and there are children here in Dumbarton starving. That is not acceptable. Not only that, the three main political parties, that's Labour, the Tories, and well, it was Liberal, who realistically have a chance of getting into power in Westminster, are totally institutionalised. They've been there so long that there's very little difference. Now, their manifestos might be different, but when they get in, really it's tinkering at the edges. Dumbarton in the last 40 years has seen this terrible economic degeneration. The High Street, and people of my age know what the High Street was like when the town had the dignity of work. A long time ago. The High Street is a wasteland, and it has degenerated and degenerated, and it really doesn't matter whether it was Labour or Tory in power. The three parties, I mean, there was a recent photo of Cameron, Clegg and Ed Miliband, and they just look interchangeable. They're all roughly the same age, all dark-haired. They only did all beautifully cut navy suits. The only difference really is that Cameron and Clegg are multi-millionaires and Miliband's only a millionaire. That's the difference. So if you want to make a difference, we must change that. Not only that, as you know, the Tories are hell-bent on getting out of Europe, I know there's a lot wrong with Europe. I think it would be disastrous financially to get out of it, but what I like about Europe more than anything else is that it makes us members that we are governed by the European Convention of Human Rights. Now, take that away, and Westminster's dying to get out of that because it's been indicted more than most countries. Westminster has been indicted in the European Convention of Human Rights more than most countries. Now, if that goes, it might seem all that's airy-fairy if that goes. Just think about it. Westminster is what Lord Hailsham used to call an elected dictatorship. And what that means is, because Britain does not have a written constitution, and it's even proud of that, the citizens have no rights. You have no rights that cannot be taken away from you by a majority of one in the House of Commons. You have just now because you're European citizens. But if that goes, you have no rights. So I would maintain Westminster can't do a thing. I'm going to stop in a second. Everybody has different reasons why they might want to vote yes. I could tell you 10, but that's not important. I'm only going to mention one. For example, last week, Ian Miller, I think here tonight, Reverend Ian Miller, gave an inspirational speech in Gartahan about why he's voting yes, because he's a lifelong CMD, and I would advise you that it's on YouTube. If you go into YouTube and just type in yes, Ian Miller, I think Ian, you've hit 2,700 hits already. Wonderful. Other people are in it. Other people want a yes vote because they want a written constitution, they want to get rid of the House of Lords, or because they want always to get the government they vote for. Because think about it, there are 63 million in the UK, there's only 5 million in Scotland, we're not even a 12th of the population. It doesn't matter how we vote, it does not matter one jot, because we're such a small percentage. So you would always get the government you vote for, and some people, and I would agree with this, would like the power of recall over MPs. I'm all for that. Now, but why I'm doing it, and this one reason, Dennis, I do. One reason. It's the only way to get rid of child poverty. Now, we vote yes. The first election was in 2016. And we've got a glimpse of what that might be. What might be an offer from the government's white paper. Now, nobody knows what kind of government will be voted in. But if one party's saying we'll do this, if anybody else wants voted in, they've got to come up with something just as good. And I can tell you, as a teacher of 40 years' experience, that what they're offering in childcare is transformational. Free childcare, just like the Scandinavian countries. They don't go to school till they're 7, but they outperform us by the time they're 15. Because of the quality of their early childcare. Free, full-time childcare for every child in Scotland. First of all, down to the age of 2, then 1, if the family wants it. That means that young women can go out and work. It relieves the army of exhausted grannies and grandpas in Scotland, if they want it. It's wonderful. And you can pinpoint, if children are there from an early age, you can pinpoint learning difficulties. You can pinpoint health problems, all sorts of things, so that this small number of children who are not being well brought up and fostered in their own home, well, they can be cared for. That's what I want for our own. I think I've said enough. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Elspeth. I think you'll agree there's no shortage of passion in Elspeth's reasons for voting yes. And she touched on Dumbarton, and that's why I'm in the chair, because if I'm a son of the rock and I've watched the decline of this town, then I'd be here all night talking about the things I'd like to change to make Dumbarton a better place.